The first time I was on an airplane, I was 8 years old when my grandparents took me to California to visit relatives. Way back then, people got dressed up to travel, and I was the proud owner of new black patent leather shoes. We settled into our seats on the plane, and I started to cry. My grandmother, who I adored, asked me why I was crying. And I told her that my feet really hurt. I was afraid to say something because I had these beautiful new shoes and I didn't want to complain. My grandmother pulled off the shoes and discovered that the crumpled up paper that comes in the front part of new shoes was still there. Problem solved. We flew on a 747. If you've been on a 747, you know these are the planes that have an upstairs seating area. These days, they're for business or first class passengers only. But originally, the top level of the 747 was a lounge that was open to anyone. And I recall the luxurious feeling of being on this huge plane, going up the stairs to the lounge where there were fancy couches and a grand piano. That trip started my fascination with travel. The next time I flew was 3 years later when I was 11, and my generous grandparents once again took me to California. However, this time, my 8-year-old brother was invited to join us. My brother was really annoying, and sometimes he still is. And I was not happy about him coming. After visiting relatives in LA, the four of us drove to San Francisco. Growing up, my family did not get to go out to eat very often, so eating out every meal was exciting. Crab at Fisherman's Wharf, sourdough bread, chocolate at Ghirardelli Square, yum. My brother, however, was a picky eater and insisted that my grandparents get him something that he liked to eat, such as chicken tenders or pizza, before we went to lunch or dinner, and then he would bring his own food to every restaurant. I bring this up because I've come to realize that even at 11 years old, I was not bothered by the fact that my brother liked chicken tenders and pizza. I liked those foods too. I was bothered by the fact that he wouldn't fully allow himself to experience where he was. I know he was only 8, but the point is that he would not venture far from life as he knew it, even to try new foods. I've been blessed with many opportunities as an adult to travel all over the world, and one important thing I've come to believe is this: our attitude, willingness to leave our comfort zones, and experience a place from the perspective of the people who live there is just as important as where we go. James Michener, a famous author, might have said it more eloquently or maybe more directly. If you reject the food, ignore the customs, fear the religion, and avoid the people, you might better stay home. Let me give you some examples of what I mean. Let's go back to food for a few minutes. This is lotus root, something I tried last time I was in China. It's delicious, but it looks different. And chances are you might not be willing to try it because of that. The last time I was in China with a group of students, after about a week, many of them started asking persistently if we could go to McDonald's or KFC. And yes, there are plenty of those in China. The other chaperones and I finally had to talk with the students and ask them to stop. Why? Their insistence on eating American food was disrespectful to our Chinese guide, who had gone out of her way to make sure we were able to try many of the foods that she loved and that represented her country. This photo was taken during a Derryfield service trip to Romania. One day we traveled to the small city of Oradea and visited a synagogue that had been destroyed during World War II. The city had a large Jewish population before the Holocaust, and now there are just a handful of Jews, but there is a Jewish community center and a kosher kitchen. We had arranged to eat lunch in the kosher kitchen, and on our way out, we ran into the woman who you see here in the front center of this picture. We could easily have walked by her and continued our day, but something compelled me to say hello. She and her caretaker, who was standing next to her, stopped, and through a translator, she asked who we were and why we were in Oradea. She proceeded to share with us that her name was Clarissa. Clarissa grew up in Oradea, and she was a survivor of the Holocaust. On that sidewalk, all huddled together on that chilly March day, Clarissa told us about the 3 concentration camps she had survived, the family members she had lost, and how proud she was of her son, who had grown up to become a famous physicist. All from looking someone in the eyes and saying hello instead of just walking by. The last story I want to share took place during a Derryfield trip to India. I chose this photo because it's fun. We happened to be in India during the holiday of Holi, a spring festival which is celebrated by throwing powdered colors all over people in the streets. But here's what was so interesting to me about being with this group in India. We spent a lot of time in the rural parts of the country where there are not a lot of American tourists. Being a fairly large group of American tourists, we stood out and garnered a lot of attention. Every place we went, people wanted to take our picture. A few students complained that they were so tired of people asking to take pictures of them or just taking pictures of them. Isn't that interesting? I asked them to think about the times they had been somewhere when they had taken pictures of the people who lived there because they looked different from us. This was the same situation. We were just on the other side of the camera. So, as you travel, regardless of how near or far, allow yourself to experience the place and the people. Go out for an early morning walk when the city or the town is just waking up and the local people are going to work or school. Go to a restaurant and try new foods. Say hello to a stranger instead of looking the other way. This, I believe, will help us all become better people and citizens of the world. Safe and happy travels regardless of where the road takes you this year, and thanks for listening.